In lesson 3, we're now going to look at this concept called returning a value. So previously we learned how to write functions in general and how to call them, and then we learned how to actually send a parameter into a function. But what we're going to learn today is how we return a value from a function back to the main program. So here our I can statements say that I can write a function in Python that returns a value. And then we can write a program that uses these functions. So the big thing is that we're going to return a value back to where the function was originally called. So just a review of the terminology, a function is a mini program, and a structured program uses functions to basically make the programming a little bit easier to read and easier to follow. So functions are mini programs that have a specific job. Structured programming is that top-down structure of breaking up that program into smaller and smaller problems that uses functions. Structured programming is also called modular programming, and there are a lot of benefits to it. It's easier to read, it's easier to debug, it's easier to basically pick it apart and reuse the code rather than having to rewrite something. So it's great stuff. Just make sure you know those terms because they're going to keep popping up in all of these video lessons as well as on your worksheets and things like that. So the big question for this lesson is how on earth do we get a value from a function? Because most functions we've used so far in this class have provided us with a value. So what I mean by that is when you use the length function, it returns a number. When we used that in Unit 5, it returned how many characters were in the string, and then we could save that value. So it returned something to us when the function was called. The lower function returned a copy of that string in all lowercase letters. So essentially it went through, it turned everything to lowercase, and then returned that whole string to the function. Rand_range would produce a random integer between 4 and 8, and that's a function that would return a number back to the main function. Ordinal took in a number and returned a character, and character took in the ASCII character entered and returned the integer. So we always had values being returned, and then we would use them in our program. So if we were doing that with built-in functions, we want to be able to write our own. And that's what we're going to focus on in this video, is how do we actually return a value to the program that we're working with. So a called function returns a value to the program that it's called in. So for example, if a function is called by the main program, that value that it returns goes back to right where it was called. If a value is returned, it must be saved inside of a variable in the program. So that was, for example, if you wrote something like ordinal function and you put in your value and you just let it sit there. Yeah, that's not very helpful. You actually had to put the equal sign and save it inside of a variable. So that's what this statement right here means. If a function returns a value, we want to make sure that we save it in our program and that we actually then use it. If the value isn't saved, it's lost. And something to note is we've already used functions for 2 days that don't return a value. So a function is not required to return a value. It just might return a value. So what we're going to do here is we have the general code for what returning a value will look like. So you'll notice we have definition, and then we have the name of our function. So it still started the same way, and then any formal parameters that you have go here. Then you have all of these statements. So this is what we talked about yesterday, defining your function, giving it a good name, putting in the parameters, and a bunch of statements. If a program returns a value, it's also going to have this line of code here where it says return, and then it has the variable name or the value that we want to return. So if our function returns a value, now we're going to add this line of code in. We're going to type return, and we're going to type what we want to return, and that will send that value back to that original main function that called it. Wherever it was called, it sends this value back, and then we want to be sure to save it. So an example in code is this function right here. You see definition. We have a function named addition that takes in 2 numbers. And what this function does is it calculates the sum of these 2 numbers and then returns the sum or a number back to the original program. So notice this line is what returns a value back to where that function was originally called. So those are the programs that we're going to create in today's lesson. So today what we're going to do is we're going to write a program that takes in a value from a user, converts it from pounds to kilograms, and prints it to the screen. So first I want to start brainstorming what this might look like, the big task that I'm going to have. So in my main function, I'm going to have a couple of miniature functions that I write that my main function uses. I'm going to have a welcome function that's going to print a welcome message. I'm going to have a get weight function that's going to return the weight to the user. It's going to, or yes, get the weight and in pounds and return it to the main function. I'm then going to have something called conversion of sorts, and it's going to send in the weight in pounds and return the weight in kilograms. There we go. We'll correct that there. There we go. And then finally, we're going to print that new weight in kilograms out to the screen. So I'm going to create 3 miniature functions in here. I'm going to create a welcome, a get weight, and a conversion function. And this is what my main program is going to look like. So what I need you to do is open up Python, do a file, save as. Then from here, you can go into your computer science projects, Unit 6. This is Unit 6, Lesson 3, returning a value from a function. That's what we're going to be doing. So here we have Unit 6, Lesson 3, return a value from a function. And this is going to convert a weight from pounds to kilograms. And then we're going to have a couple of different functions in here. So to start, I'm going to have definition main. This is where all my main code is going to go as I type it. And I'm just kind of going to leave that here for now, and I'm going to start typing all of my mini functions. So my first function that I want to type is the welcome function. So I have definition welcome. It doesn't need to take in any parameters. And also note, I'm going to put a little line across the screen of comments so that I can note that this is a new function. So this function itself is going to print a welcome message to the screen. And I'm going to add another space in there just for readability. There we go. So the welcome function is just going to print a welcome message to the screen. So it's going to print welcome to our program. And it's going to print, we will help you convert your weight from pounds to kilograms. So this is my welcome function. It's going to print a welcome message. And then up in my main program, I'm just going to call the welcome function. Going to call the welcome function and print the welcome message to the screen. That's what this first part is going to do. It's going to print that welcome message to the screen. It doesn't need any parameters sent in because you don't need any values sent in here. It just is going to print, and then it doesn't need to return any values either because it's not going to return a value. It's just going to print. So there's our first function that we need for this program. So then I'm going to copy this line of comments here. There we go. And I'm going to write my next function. And this one is going to be called get weight. So get, we need definition, get weight. And then in here, I don't need to send in a value, but I'm going to get the weight from the user, and then I'm going to return it back to the program. So this is going to have a weight equal to, and then if we do, let's do input eval, please enter in your weight in pounds. So from here, we now have the basics of this program. In the next video, because this one's about to expire, I am going to show you how to return a value back to the program in this get weight function.